Ranking Sunbelt East coaches. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we did the Sunbelt West yesterday. I thought that'd be a little bit more controversial. We do have two new coaches over there that are more incomplete than anything else because they don't have any head coaching background compared to Bob Chesney and with JMU. So we may have a little bit different one. I thought these were a little closer based on their results. And so I think there's a bigger separation between Ken Womack and Will Hall between 1 and 5 than I do between maybe 1 and 7 in the Sunbelt East. All right, so let's do that. We'll also preview Sunbelt Hoops coming up tomorrow. And in tomorrow's episode, we can recap what happens tonight, right? Troy hosting Georgia Southern and the Cajuns off to Troy. So we'll have that for tomorrow's show. All right, so let's do the Sunbelt East coaches. And also impressed with myself, did it off the top of my head. I didn't need any help. So we're going to go number 7, Shawn Elliott. This season, started out 6-1, right? They had that big win over the Cajuns. Gavin Pringle, a huge interception over Zion Chris. And then they didn't win again until the bowl game. They went into the tank, right? They had a big loss to Georgia Southern, and maybe that was on a short week, and they just never really recovered from that and took some big losses. I will give Shawn Elliott some credit based on the bowl game. All right. They went out west. You know, we got the Darren Granger of the Darren Granger that we know and love, right? He played well. And we heard throughout that ball game, if you were paying attention, because they said it incessantly, that, Shawn Elliott, challenged Darren Granger to play better. And then he did. Didn't he have like 5 touchdowns? It was like 3 on the ground and 2 or 3 in the air and 2 on the ground, something like that. He had a big ball game. But Shawn Elliott just has not. And it's not the easiest program to do, right? You are in a pro town. You're dealing with, Georgia Tech in town. Georgia dominates, football in Georgia. So it is not easy trying to build something there, admittedly. Maybe they can maybe they can use the bowl win to move forward. They had a change, and he made a big deal about this, the strength and conditioning and changing the culture, and it seemed to work, right? I mean, they did get off to a 6-1 start, like they're contending for the Sunbelt East Championship, and then they went into the tank, and I'm not sure why. If we're going to give credit to coaches who do a good job coaching in season, like we did Butch Jones, you got to have to take away the credit for doing guys who didn't do quite as well. So Shawn Elliott is number 7. Georgia Southern's Clay Helton is number 6. Again, another team that seemed to go into the tank. And, well, in this case, we know why. Interceptions. All right, I don't know if that's the Clay Helton offense. He had the issues with Kyle Van Treese last year. He had issues with Davis Bridden this season. He won't make changes. He's a little bit stubborn when it comes to that. So there's an issue there as well. I think Clay Helton is a pretty good football coach. Need to figure out on how to not be throwing interceptions every ball game, right? And I know we gave Davis Brin a pass for the Wisconsin ball game. Kind of tough to give somebody a pass with 5 interceptions and 1 fumble, 6 turnovers in 1 ball game in a game that they could have won. But somewhere along the way, you got to put the premium on not turning the ball over. All right. And somewhere along the way, I'm almost sure every other coach would have changed it, right? Somewhere along the way, you got to make the change to the next guy, at least for a couple possessions, at least for a half, at least for a game, just to see what you got, Now, he knows what they got in practice, but somewhere along the way, you gotta make the change, and we'll see what happens with Georgia Southern going forward. So Georgia State, Shawn Elliott, 7. Georgia Southern's Clay Helton, 6. All right. Now we go to ODU, Ricky Ronnie. He had to make a change. They were bad a couple of years ago. They went to go get the quarterback, if you will, and the offensive coordinator from Fordham, right? It was between Fordham and Incarnate Word, who had the best offenses, and I never get this right. I think Incarnate Word led the nation in scoring, and Fordham led the nation in yardage, or it was reversed. And so they went to go get the backup quarterback from Fordham, it should be mentioned. And, Wilson had a good season, capping it off with a 4th and 3 QB draw, Alabama, and, getting them into a bowl game. And again, pure unadulterated joy. Coach Ronnie's wife leaping into his arms to get to a bowl game, on the last play of the game. They had an up and down season, right? Had a big win against the Cajuns early on. Probably should have beaten Wake early on. I think they beat App at home. That's a nice win. And then they had the meltdown with a bowl game. So as much as Georgia State and Shawn Elliott can look to the future and say we're going into the season, into next season, the offseason with some momentum, I mean, Ricky Ronnie's got to be looking at that bowl game. What the heck happened? I know some bad calls didn't go their way, yada, yada, yada. That doesn't change what the offense did once the things started going poorly against the defense. It doesn't change what the offense did. So they had a really good season. I think he did a great job in season. And then, was ready to celebrate a big bowl victory. And then they had a meltdown. It's one thing losing a bowl, I think. I think there's a difference between the way the Cajuns lost, right, in a game that was back and forth, and a meltdown. In fact, I think we had that episode, which way would you want to lose, right? Like Georgia Southern was a no-show. Georgia Southern just didn't show up against Ohio, right? They're getting blown out from the get-go, right? So we didn't want that. I'm not sure you would want a meltdown the way you lose. And the Cajuns went back and forth. I thought out of those 3 teams, I thought the Cajuns played the best, as all the teams came up short. So I got Ricky Ronnie as the number 5th coach in the Sun Belt East. All right. And this is where I'm going to go, kind of know what we have with Ronnie, Helton, and Elliott. I'm going to go Bob Chesney as the number 4 coach in the Sun Belt East, JMU's Bob Chesney. All right. I believe he was in the mix for Syracuse. So he was getting some Power 5 love, and I think JMU went with a good choice. This is going to be different than what we have out in the West, right? With Jared Parker, with Bryant Vincent, and again, the guy who got the Syracuse job, Fran Brown. Those guys have never been head coaches. Should be noted. Fran Brown's not even been a coordinator. Nonetheless, Bob Chesney, as we mentioned when he got hired, 13 years of head coaching experience. He is 111 and 46. That's winning at a 71% clip. Well, he's never taken programs over that needed, revamping. Yeah, he has. He's turned them around and fast. That may prove to be more difficult in the Sun Belt, but, I think he's got his quarterback transferred in. I think he's going to be okay. They may not be where they were the last couple of years as division champs, but I also don't think that JMU is going to drop to the bottom because they hired an FCS coach. I think Bob Chesney is going to have that operation heading in the right direction, continuing to head in the right direction. You're going to take a step back when you lose a bunch of coaches, you lose a bunch of players. That's inevitable. But I don't think they're going to fall flat on their face because they got an FCS coach. So I got Bob Chesney, number 4. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll do the top 3 in the Sun Belt East coaches. We will do that right after this when I tell you about LinkedIn. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, In fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and may not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We're ranking the Sunbelt East coaches. We started with Georgia State, Shawn Elliott, number 7. May have the team going in the right direction with a nice win. We'll see who their quarterback is going to be. You got Georgia Southern's Clay Helton. Again, two teams that were really off to good starts and both kind of fell flat at the end. Although, again, as we mentioned, Georgia State got the nice bowl win. Ricky Ronnie from ODU went to a bowl game and had a really exciting finish at the end outside of, and then kind of fell flat in the bowl game at the end. And Bob Chesney, new head coach at JMU. Again, it's a very different, I don't know if you see this very often. These guys, I think even the North Dakota State coach, didn't he go to USC to be like the defensive coordinator or something like that? So you just don't see very often FCS head coaches with all kinds of experience in this case. You rarely see it. Usually you go the Jared Parker way or the Bryant Vincent way. Also, although Jared Parker's taken over a good program, Bryant Vincent is stepping into a hard job. Bob Chesney is stepping into a 2-time defending division champion. All right. So number 3, ranking our Sunbelt East coaches, we're going with Tim Beck, Coastal Carolina. Whereas Shawn Elliott would not make the adjustments, Tim Beck did. All right. Tim Beck played 3 or 4 different quarterbacks this year. He had Grayson McCall. Hurt. He went to, 3 quarterbacks. The 4th one even played. He did a good job. The offense that Tim Beck installed was not working. He went back to the Jamie Chadwell, whatever you want to call it, RPO triple option deal. And that worked. They got a big win over App State. And it felt like Grayson McCall was more comfortable until he got, think he got knocked out of the Arkansas State game and never came back. Then you go into Jared Guest and Ethan Basco, and they're winning bowl games. They're taking controversial pictures, if you want to call that controversial, with the dance team, on the beach in Hawaii. There are worse places to go to bowl games than Hawaii. So that's a nice thing to do, especially when you get to go out there for a week. All right. I would presume the focus on the football game is tough, but they came away with a nice win. And it does feel like they have their quarterback, right? We're going with Ethan Vasco. I combined the 2 quarterbacks. Ethan Vasco, right? So Grayson McCall has transferred. Didn't he end up at NC State? And then Jared Guest went into the portal, and we're going with Ethan Vasco. All right. And I just think that Tim Beck, again, an older guy, has been a coordinator for a long time, finally gets his chance, was going on to do things his way. The biggest recruit he got last year was Grayson McCall coming back, and then I'm not sure he's playing Grayson McCall to his full ability because he was putting his offense in. All right. I would have, let's stick with the offense that we got. All right. And then we'll, transition to the offense that I want once we get our guys in 2 or 3 years in. But Tim Beck said, you know what? We're going with my offense. That didn't work. We're going to go back to your offense because that seems to work better. And I think Tim Beck did a heck of a job. In game coaching, season coaching. All right. He is number 3. All right. This may be a little bit controversial. I got Charles Huff, Marshall's head coach, number 2. I'm a big Charles Huff fan. This year did not go their way. This year was not a good year. All right. Couldn't keep guys healthy, right? Cam Fancher was hurt and Rasheen Ali was hurt. It did not go in the direction, especially defensively, trying to figure out what was going on defensively, even in wins. And early on in the season, they overcame some deficits and got wins later on. Come from behind. I'm still a Charles Huff fan. I still believe in them. I think they got the right guy for the job. I think he's a big fan of Huntington. I think he's a big fan of Marshall. And I think, given a quarterback and now trying to find a running back, I think Charles Huff will be in good shape. They got to do better on the defensive side of the ball. There were some games a couple years ago that they, came up short in. I know they ran Cam Fancher off, right? Cam Fancher ran off, if you want to put it that way. Ended up in FAU, by the way. He's down. We went to the Boca Bowl. That's a nice stadium, 45-0 thrashing to Syracuse notwithstanding. But I'm a big fan of Charles Huff. I think he's the second best coach in the division. I know this year did not go their way. All right. And the number one coach in the Sun Belt East, it may surprise some people in lovely Boone, North Carolina, but I think Shawn Clark. I think Shawn Clark is a really good football coach. I think he had plans to begin the season, and I think he said 6 plays in, those changed. Right? He had one quarterback, and that quarterback got hurt, and now we're going to Joey Aguilar, and Joey was ready to go. And he had an outstanding season for App State. Big fan of what they did. They came up short in some losses, right? They had Carolina to overtime. They should have beaten, as much as we said. Let's see here. Coastal Carolina had a big win over App State. App State should have won that football game. All right. They made a big play to win the game, and then the wide receiver fumbled trying to make a play. They only lost maybe, and not to, throw shade to ODU. Maybe they want that ODU game back, but that's a big win for ODU. They're losing games by field goals. They get a goal line stand and kick a 54-yard field goal to beat ULM. They overcame a lot. They really dominated the bowl game, although the score wouldn't appear that way because of all the turnovers and the rain. But that's a nice win for Shawn Clark. Again, here is the problem that you have in the Sun Belt East, right? And we've talked about this throughout. Everybody expects to win. App State has a winning tradition. Marshall has a winning tradition. JMU has a winning tradition. And Georgia Southern has a winning tradition. Everybody can't win at the same time. That's the problem. It's just not feasible. Someone's going to lose out. And so when you expect championships all the time, that's kind of rough. All right. I thought App State had a good season, capped it off with a bowl victory. And you got Joey Aguilar coming back, right? He's the guy going in. That is one headache. And I think that is a huge headache that you don't have to worry about. He's our quarterback, right? So now, instead of installing the offense in the spring or having a competition in the spring or the fall, now we got Joey Aguilar. Now we can work on self-scouting, what we need to improve on, and what we can change up a little bit. All right. And then the fall is just filling in the pieces where, through attrition, through the transfer portal and recruiting, who's going to fill in the spots. But it's got to be a relief for a head coach knowing who the quarterback is. Now, maybe they got to find the backup quarterback, right? You can't, in this day and age, you can't play college football without having a good backup quarterback or two, because someone's going to tweak an ankle. Someone's going to get a concussion. You just got to be ready, to play every game. All right. Someone's got to be ready to back it up and go every game. So I think Shawn Clark and App State are heading in the right direction. I think they had a better season than others, and I'm a big fan of Shawn Clark. The blowout in the Sun Belt Championship game was basically one play. It was the scoop and score, and that turned the game around. And then they couldn't stop Mahdi on the ground when he had 5 touchdowns. But that game was not nearly the blowout that the score would indicate. Second half got away from App State. It was a 4-point game, and after the scoop and score, then it turned right. I mean, they actually held Troy to a field goal, 21-17. And then I'm seeing my score is off, but they held them to 4 point. They held them to a field goal. Maybe it was 2017. They held them to a field goal, and then they got the scoop and score, and then they're off to the races. All right. All right. Let's take a timeout. We'll preview Thursday's Sun Belt matchups in basketball. All right. And of course, for Thursday's episode, we'll go over Wednesday's basketball action. Also, after we do the coaches, why not rate the quarterbacks? Because basically we're rating, well, certainly the way too early episodes of, ranking the teams. for predicting the teams is going to be based on the quarterbacks, of course. All right, let me tell you about FanDuel. The NFL season has wrapped up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's see if we got the lines for tonight's ball games. We may actually have the lines for tomorrow's as well, although I'm not exactly sure about that. Let's see what we got here. All right, so tonight we do have Marshall hosting Georgia Southern. Marshall off to a 3-0 start after being 5-8 pre-conference. And Georgia Southern 2-1 in the Sun Belt after starting out 0-12. Marshall, an 11.5-point favorite. May take Georgia Southern on that one. And then you have Troy, which is a 2.5-point favorite over the Cajuns. Probably take Troy in that one. That's not much of a spread, I presume, because Troy's playing. They play kind of good defense. So I would look for Troy to win that ball game. It's not going to take much, but that game's going to be closer. And I do think the Cajuns have a shot at that. All right. We do not have lines for the Thursday ball games, but let's see what we got. All right. JMU 14-1 coming off their first loss of the season against Southern Miss. They'll try to bounce back. Again, winning on the road is hard. All right. South Alabama heading to JMU. I don't know what to make out of South Alabama. Sometimes they look really good. They're coming from behind for 22 and then kind of lay an egg at home. They're 8-7, 1-2 in the Sun Belt. I presume JMU is going to win this ball game. I don't know if they're going to cover because I'm going to presume it's going to be double digits. That's going to be a lot. All right. Georgia State is 2-1. They're hosting Old Dominion, and you don't put too many must wins on this, but this is a must win for Georgia State. They're off to a really good start, right? By the way, if they win this ball game, that matches their Sun Belt win total from last year. So, right, they went 3-15 in the Sun Belt last year. They're 2-1. You got to beat Old Dominion at home. All right, they're 0-3, 4-11 overall. You can't trip up at home if you are Georgia State. And let me quickly see who Georgia State has coming up, because all of a sudden Georgia State could start out 4-1. They get Georgia Southern. All right. Is that right? Hold on. I think it is. Because usually you do the Texas two-step, and that's not what Georgia Southern is doing. Saturday, they're hosting Georgia Southern. So I say the Georgia's two-step. Anyways, so Georgia State could very well start out the season 4-1. You got to take advantage of these home games. And although Georgia Southern's has played well 2 out of 3, you got to win at home. All right. Coastal Carolina, who I actually was impressed with, again, just wouldn't go away. Cajuns, I thought the Cajuns played well, just wouldn't go away. And Joe Charles was just too much. Coastal Carolina, 4-10. They're hosting App State. App had, didn't they hang on for the big win against South Alabama? They lost to Troy. They beat South Alabama and lost to Troy, so they're coming off a loss. App State is pretty good. They're 11-4. I presume App State is going to win this basketball game. All right, you got UL Monroe hosting Southern Miss. Southern Miss has won 2 in a row after their loss to Georgia Southern to begin Sun Belt play. They're coming off the win against James Madison. Really impressive. It was interesting. And I don't want to I hate constructive criticism when it comes to this stuff. But they did give Andre Curbelo the Sun Belt Player of the Week. Now, he had the triple-double, and I don't know everybody who played. I guess I could go through it, but I'm not going to. He had the triple-double in their win against Georgia State. 13 points, 11 assists, 10 rebounds. All right. And then he had 15 and 9 against JMU. The thing is, I mean, in Georgia State, I think he shot 5 of 21. He was 5 of 21. He is 10 for his last 36. That's volume shooting and not very effective. All right. Now, the stats, again, 13, 11, and 10 is impressive. All right. And 15 and 9 is impressive. And being part of that team that beat JMU is impressive. But shot selection or conversion needs to be considered, right? You can't be somewhere along the way, 36% or whatever it is from your point guard's going to come back to bite you, right? I mean, 5 of 21, a little bit over anxious. All right. They're playing better with him in the lineup, that's for sure. But you need to convert a little bit more or be more selective, one or the other. You can't or just put more in. Can't be shooting 5 or 21 or even 5 for 15. Now, he makes 2 more shots out of the 5. You go 7 for 15, and then you can deal with that, right? So it's not that far off. 5 for 21 is not that great. But Andre Curbelo is your Sun Belt Player of the Week, leading Southern Miss to a couple of wins. And who do we say they're playing? They got to see if they can follow that up with a win against Monroe, who is struggling. Monroe's struggling. They are 0-3 in the Sun Belt, 4-9 overall. Now you have Texas State. So we'll wrap it up here. Texas State 0-3, 6-9 overall. They're going to go play Arkansas State. Now, here's the difference. Arkansas State is 6-9 overall, but they're 2-1 in the Sun Belt. They have that big blowout win against Georgia Southern. And they follow that up with a nice win against Old Dominion. And their one loss in the Sun Belt is a 1-point loss to Georgia State. Not saying that they would have won the ball game, but Caleb Fields missed the second free throw to tie the ball game up with seconds to play. All right, so that doesn't guarantee that they would have won, but that's their one loss, is a 1-point loss when their point guard and perhaps best player missed the second free throw. So Arkansas State, again, another one of those teams. Marshall doesn't have a great overall record. Georgia Southern obviously has an awful overall record. And I don't even think Troy's record is all that great. But these teams have really good starts to the Sun Belt play. Let me see Arkansas State. So they're at home quickly. So see who they get, right? So they're getting Texas State and then the Cajuns. And so that's going to be interesting. The Cajuns have their work cut out of them. They're going to Troy and they're going to Jonesboro. And the Cajuns could come back 1-4 in the Sun Belt. Ouch. Whereas could Arkansas State start out 4-1? That's a good job. That's a good job of coaching. So we shall see. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On Sunbelt. Please comment. I'd love to hear you. We got some comments on the Sunbelt West coaches. Someone corrected me. I'm not sure about correcting, but they did add to the mix. I forgot that Coach Mike Desimo actually won his first game, which was the New Orleans Bowl. So he's 1-2 in bowl games. Although he did not get them to that bowl game, right? That was still Napier's conference champion. But nonetheless, I appreciate people listening. Someone also commented that Butch Jones wasn't going anywhere, which may very well have been the case. But I don't know if you're bringing back Butch Jones if he's 2-10, right? So, and the blowouts continued, but he didn't. You don't have to worry about that because he turned things around going to Jalen Rayner. So that's, of course, making the adjustments. So we'll see if other coaches can do that. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back again on Thursday. You've been watching Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.